Greetings to the Conscious Collective. We have a treat today. We're going to deviate a little bit from our normal morning practices and talks. And I have a very, very honored and special guest that I will be interviewing. I am truly honored to have met this person. This is Orra the Infromationalist. Um, he is I want to say the creator of the Network of Awareness podcast that's simulcast on TikTok, also under the same name, has almost 30,000, over 30,000 subscribers, followers on TikTok. And like me, on a spiritual journey, um, exploring consciousness and sharing those discoveries with the larger conscious collective. So I want to thank Orra for being a part of this conversation, and I'll leave it over to you to introduce yourself, and we can begin, engaging.
Before I introduce myself, should I join the YouTube chat? It's saying to connect to YouTube.
If it would allow you to, yeah, go ahead. That's no problem.
Yeah, let me try that out. It's
Yeah,
been a
why don't you
minute
try
since
that
I
out? Because I'm still exploring the different mediums to which we can communicate and see if you can join that conversation.
Okay, great. All
Right.
right, so let me see. I think I can join here. Continue. I like the way StreamYard has this set up. It's pretty cool. It's giving you the option. Yeah, there we go. Divine Risings,
Divine
everybody.
Rising,
Supreme Grand
Nicole.
Rising.
We brought Aura over on our community. I know you were part of the conversation yesterday, and we wanted to continue it. Um, and so, thank you for joining us as people
Yeah,
come in. We introduce yourself and jump
sure.
in. All
So
right.
I'm Orra the Informationalist from the Network of Awareness. The Network of Awareness is a lighthouse that is also a podcast. And what we do is it's all about multidimensional consciousness awareness. If I was to give it one title, and it's all about breaking the chains of fear-based programming so that we can reclaim spiritual sovereignty. And on this platform, when we integrate it with TikTok as a simulcast and we do the live panel guests, we have meaningful connections with our reflections so that we gain elevation. Now, first and foremost, Bob, I want to say that thank you, and I would appreciate the invitation to come onto this platform and continue this conversation from where we left off yesterday on my platform on TikTok, because the discussion that we began yesterday was not just a conversation about these ideas when it comes to 3D and 5D and the collapse of 3D, but it was a conversation about a moment in this human history, so to speak, that many people feel, but they're still having some challenges articulating what they're feeling. And yesterday, when we talked about the possibility that humanity is moving through what many describe as the collapse of the 3D paradigm or matrix, and this slow but steady emergence of this higher level of consciousness that some people are referring to 5D consciousness, or some people say 5D awareness. Now, whenever people hear this language, um, like the way we're gonna, talk about it, sometimes, in my experience, I notice it can trigger different reactions. Sometimes it triggers, a lot of excitement. Some people are a little skeptical, and some people are just confused because they're just used to the way things being a certain way. And they're like, man, I just want to pay my bills and get by the day. Help me do that. And all of these reactions are completely understandable, because whenever human beings attempt to describe these shifts in consciousness, that language that we use is very often symbolic rather than it being literal. So when we say things like 5D or 3D, we're not necessarily talking about a particular location, like there would be a location in a map or some particular space. We're talking about ways of perceiving reality and these ways of organizing thoughts and relating to one another, really, to the world around us as well, because the so-called 3D paradigm, this worldview is all centered around survival, and it's been conditioned that way. That's why we're all, you know, regulating our nervous systems to get out of this fight or flight mode. And this worldview that sees life primarily through this lens of competition and control and scarcity, um, that framework, we're starting to wake up to the fact that it doesn't work. It's unsustainable. This civilization and the way it's constructed is unsustainable. And it makes that goal of life become about acquiring resources and protecting your territory and maintaining power structures that ensure your stability. But for the long time, this so-called human history worldview has made sense to people, but it's not no more, because humanity is evolving through these environments where survival was uncertain and the resources were limited. But now, as we are awakening and developing in that awareness, what's happening now is our capacity for awareness has began expanding beyond this survival mentality, where human beings are asking more deeper questions. They're questioning, meaning in life. They're having questions about what actual purpose means, and if we have it, and should we have it, and questioning consciousness itself, which I think is a beautiful thing, because those questions gradually push us into new territories, and it creates new paradigms for us to create space and explore. So what many people today are experiencing is that tension between those two worlds, the old paradigm of the survival and the control, and then the one that's emerging right now of awareness and interconnectedness in this age of Aquarius. And that tension is it's very visible everywhere right now. You're seeing it play out in religion, you're seeing it play out in different cultures and politics, and the way people interact with information presently. Because on one side, there are forces attempting to maintain the structures that have existed for generations, especially within the Piscean age. And then on the other side, there's individuals and communities like us and many more that they're beginning to question whether those structures still serve the evolution of humanity. And we know that they don't. But whatever that kind of tension emerges, the translation rarely feels smooth. And just like it's not smooth right now, it's feeling very chaotic, because these systems, they're built for one level of consciousness, which is struggle, right? They want you to think that struggle is normal, and that struggle, we have to adapt to one another within it. And we're witnessing right now that right now may be one of those transitional periods where, and we're going to talk about it, I'm pretty sure you're going to probably bring it up, where this awakening is not something that happens to humanity collectively overnight, but it's happening through individuals, one individual at a time, one mind at a time is awakening up, and they're realizing that they're having these moments of awareness, and these people are having enough time to pause long enough to question the assumptions that they once inherited or we inherited. And they're choosing to be more curious instead of being more fearful. So every time somebody decides to observe reality rather than react to it automatically, that's sending out a signal, that's sending out a ripple effect throughout this consciousness that's in this realm on this planet. And it's making a significant impact. And when you start having more and more people like that, now we're talking about millions of those moments beginning to happen across the planet, and something extraordinary is beginning to shape this thing called awakening. So I'm just appreciating the process. I'm in gratitude to be here, and ready to engage in this meaningful conversation with you about this topic that we started yesterday, from from fear to freedom, and this fall of 3D to 5D.
All right, great, right. Before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. I see knowledge, wisdom, and truth out there that was supposed to be part of this conversation. I don't know if we were supposed to get a confirmation. I don't know if that's still true. If not, we can definitely make arrangements to try to bring you up, or maybe reschedule knowledge Please let me know what your feelings are regarding that. Also, to all that have just came in, you know, greetings, 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 divine rising to all those that have just came in. We are talking with Orra the Infromationalist of the Network of Awareness. We had a very strong and positive conversation that we wanted to continue today on my channel. It was a little, excuse me, it got a little disjointed yesterday. We had some audio problems. It was supposed to be simulcast yesterday, so you guys didn't see me yesterday because I was being interviewed on the Network of Awareness on Aura's channel, and so we couldn't simulcast it. So I just opted out and worked on this channel, and I'll be reloading that up later. We see Knowledge says he's on the road and have to work. So, okay, so I don't know how that's going to work. But let's move forward with our conversation. And as always, I like to start at the beginning, So I want to ask you, how did your awakening begin? How did your journey begin? And the second part of that, how did it change your view of the world? I know, me personally, I think I've told the story that a lot of people have a very traumatic awakening. It's based in some type of trauma, and the world tends to kind of collapse on itself. That was not my experience. I just felt a calling and a get up and do something, and I didn't know what that was. So I started to search. I started to read. I started to expand my mind, and it gently led me down this path where I feel that I'm the most comfortable at in working in my purpose and mission. So, can you give us some background on how you first started this process? What was your triggering point, and how did it kind of affect the way you view the world now?
Well, mine was always kind of present since a young boy, as a star child or star seed. And my mother said something to me interesting when I was in my 20s. She said, out of my four children that were born, I was the youngest. But I'm the youngest, and I'm the youngest where my siblings are like 1 year apart from each other, the three of them, and they're all like in the same age group. And then I'm 9.5, almost 10 years behind being born. Now, my mom told me that out of all her children, I'm the only one who questioned everything from the moment I started talking. I started asking, why is this like this? Why is that like
Right.
that? And I remember it was either 6 or 7 years old. I'm going to say seven. One of the biggest things that I that I couldn't understand for the life of me, that made no sense, that I was just like, this is something troubling me, where I'm trying to make sense of it, but I can't. So I look to adults. And one of the questions that I used to always ask my mother is, why does racism exist? Because I couldn't understand it. Couldn't understand how people are perceiving each other and judging each other based on the skin complexion. It just was kind of ridiculous to me. But nobody can seem to give me an answer. And, growing up, I slowly but surely, I grew up in a narcissistic household. So even though I came in with this awareness and this curiosity and questions, and I knew things were off, I started slowly but surely people pleasing. And the reason I started people pleasing, like a lot of us do, is for survival purposes. Because as a child, I was shunned a lot. I was told to shut up. Um, I was told to kind of like be quiet and stop being so curious or inquisitive. And so I became introverted, so I stayed to myself, and I people pleased to survive in those environments. But I always felt this calling that this world that I was experiencing is not exactly what it is. And I would just get little bits and pieces of it. And it wasn't until I got set up to be, I don't know if you could say the KILL word, because I'm so conditioned to curbing my language on these social media apps. But can you say that here on YouTube, or are they going to flag you if I say the KILL word?
We usually say unalive.
Okay, you say the same thing. So
Yeah.
I got set up to get on the live by one of my closest friends when I was 15 in the Bronx, and that that really catapulted my awakening. It was a gradual process, but that was one of those shocks to it, and it really kind of tainted me and pushed me on a trajectory to where I ran away from home for a little over a year, had some real surreal supernatural experiences that by the time I was 18 years old, I went through a very transformative experience with my medicine man godfather named Aguilar. May he rest in power. And now I started learning about my indigenous traits. I started learning more in a constructive way about my star seed, star child abilities. And I was being revealed all these different things. And that really catapulted my awakening. But even though it did at 18 years old, I still wasn't disciplined to taking it seriously.
Mm.
So I went through my trials and tribulations of not loving myself and going through that, but still at the same time being going through that gradual awakening process to where when I started loving myself for the first time, all of those years of that gradual process came to a point where it was just like now it was like done. Now it's like we've arrived and we're not gonna regress from here on out, and that's how it all came to be, and that's what put me on the journey to start the network of awareness, because I was supposed to start the network of awareness in 2012, but I wasn't the reason I wasn't ready because I was attached to too many things that wasn't serving the highest good of my higher self or my true authentic self. And I guess that's just how the divine works, where it's like you're not going to be able to take on something until you are really truly prepared to do it. And one of the things that I had to detach from was from these toxic narcissistic relationships that I people pleased myself into. And once I got rid of that and started loving myself, I started the network of awareness in 2020, and I haven't looked back ever since. And since I started this podcast, which is more of a movement. But when I started this podcast and this community, it hasn't been the same. And ever since I started loving myself, I feel like I've lived more years since I started loving myself than I actually did before I made that decision. So it's just been a very interesting journey up to present day, and I'm just in gratitude for it.
You know, I think a lot of people can resonate with that, and especially the part is this is really a movement. This is not just, I mean, you move from the place of expanding your consciousness and you move into purpose and mission, and it becomes a movement almost ordained that we raise the consciousness of humanity and that we're able to share our journeys with each other. Let's kind of boil it down into uh, the framework, as I call it, so we can expand out from that. Right? Let's discuss the matrix. I think we went over my understanding of the matrix as being the actual screen on which we project our reality on. And I wanted to get your points of views on that, because in this collective, it's not I'm right, you wrong, you right, I'm wrong. It's about us expanding our consciousness, being open to new ideas. All right, this is how we're different from religions. We don't have a doctrine. We have a search, a journey that we're on. We talked yesterday about the difference between answers and truth. Answers are finite. Truth is always evolving. And most people just want answers. But in this conscious collective, we seek truth. So I wanted to get your impression on the matrix, and how do you see it?
Well, actually, piggybacking on what what we discussed yesterday, is, and I wanted to address something that sometimes gets lost in these discussions when it comes to this matrix and when we talk about awakening. Awakening is not about rejecting the world we live in. So many people is like, oh, we got to escape this simulation and all. It's like, but we don't. All we got to do is vibrate out of it, because we're, as multidimensional beings, our participation in it is making it so. But when we start putting our attention to what really matters, which is within, now we have the opportunity to create a different experience. So this is not about pretending that this physical reality doesn't exist. And it's certainly not about escaping it, the responsibility from it. The true awareness deepens our engagement with this world. Awareness is everything, because awareness transcends the limitations that have been placed on us as a people, as a humanity. Because when you begin seeing the systems around you more clearly, you also begin recognizing your role in shaping them. Yeah, and it's not about playing small. We've been conditioned to play small, like, oh, I'm just a plumber, or I'm just this. And it's like we're so much more than that. And a lot of people are realizing that the future of this thing called humanity is not determined by governments or institutions. It's the influence that we put on it by the consciousness of the individuals who participate in those systems, which means that every person has more influence than they often realize. And not necessarily through these grand gestures, but we're talking about through the choices that we make in our everyday lives. And that could be something like the way we treat people, the way we process the information we receive, hopefully with a lot of discernment, the way we decide what kind of energy uh, people bring or they bring into spaces that they occupy. Just these really small decisions that accumulate and compound upon each other, and the ripple outward that it sends for these communities that are curious and desire to have more awareness. And this influence culture is very powerful because over time, they shape the direction of society. And I think that, from my perspective, I think that's what's happening right now. So when we talk about the possibility that humanity is moving beyond a fear-based matrix paradigm, we're not talking about something mystical here, even though the mysticism is part of it, but we're talking about something that's happening in out there in the universe, which is also happening in here. That's where the true universe is. And the heart is the guiding star to it, which helps us to navigate. We're talking about something very real happening, not just in the mind, but it's happening within the collective consciousness. There's this gradual recognition that consciousness itself is one of the most powerful forces shaping the world. And we're like the water that gets shaped by it. You know how, like what Bruce Lee said, water can turn into any type of form. And we carry about what, 70 to 80% of water in our bodies. This realm carries about 70 to 80%. And now, through the crystalline consciousness, we are tapping into that water so that we can gain remembrance. And we're starting to remember now. And that remembrance is breaking the spell of forgetfulness, which is shaping this matrix. So when we start to use this power more with greater awareness and more compassion and responsibility, the way this future is unfolding in the present moments is turning into that 5D consciousness where everything is more conscious of its connection to each other instead of it separating itself from each other like it does in the 3D. So every transformation that happens is going to come with the challenge. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be confusion, but there's always going to be people, that are going to embrace the awakening. And then there's going to be people who prefer the familiarity of that 3D paradigm. But like I always say, man, I say this like a slogan. The evolution will not be televised because it's internalized. And that evolution does not need permission, and it's unfolding through this natural process of growth within each and every one of us and through our journey of self-discovery. So in my perspective, I think we are witnessing right now is simply humanity reaching that next stage of that journey of self-discovery that's leading to that self-mastery. And we're just in another chapter of this never-ending story of consciousness that's exploring itself. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating to be alive right now. It's a great time to be alive. And this future for human awareness is being written by each individual soul that's taking responsibility for their life, for the life that they get to live. And they're starting to realize, wait a second, this matrix does exist. But if I just give attention to what truly matters to me and not attention to what's being projected onto me, then I can create the reality I want to experience. And that's why, even though people look at it as a cliche saying, but it's really real, is if you want to change the world, you have to be the change that you want to experience in the world. And I think people around the world internationally are starting to really own that. They're like, they really have an understanding and awareness of that, and they are moving with that awareness. And now their world is changing because they're changing within themselves.
We're talking today with Orra the Infromationalist of the Network of Awareness. I am totally honored to bring him up to address the conscious collective. I've, I've, I've brought people before the conscious collective before and did not have very positive results. Let's just say that. But we are continuing an interview from yesterday that we had on his podcast / TikTok channel, and I am totally impressed by the scope and vastness of the knowledge that he shares. We met originally through a ascension awareness practice that we did here in Atlanta. He was brought down by mutual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and truth, knowledge, wisdom, and truth. And we immediately connected. And this is what I want to bring to the collective's attention, is that we all don't have to have the exact identical perspective, but we all bring something to the conversation, right? We all become part of the whole. And so as we share our knowledge, we continue to expand our views and our awareness and our consciousness. So it's always important to have these conversations with like-minded people, even though there may not be a total synchronicity between, but no one is right and no one is exclusively wrong. We're all on a journey, and it's always beneficial to engage each other in that journey with open hearts and open minds, so that we too can expand our consciousness and we can continue our journey with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more understanding. So I am totally honored that Orra has taken the time to share with the Conscious Collective his perspective, his deep thinking about the current state of our consciousness and the current state of our purpose here on Earth plane. So I wanted to ask you about discernment versus deception. You mentioned that, and I wanted you to kind of elaborate on the importance of it. I come from the view of the chakras and the third eye being open. So we do a lot of psychic practices to bring that that energy, to unblock that energy, to make individuals more aware, so that they can navigate this plane of existence more effectively, because we know that there's a lot of untruths floating around. We understand that how they operate. So can you elaborate more on discernment and the importance of it?
Yeah, I think that, as you know, when we're young, we're conditioned from children to doubt. And the first thing we're kind of conditioned to doubt is ourselves. And then that doubt turns into, a lot of time, people pleasing the doubts. And what I mean by that is that, if anybody, I'm pretty sure a lot of people here have heard the term benefit of the doubt. Oh, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. What I found is that when we give the benefit of the doubt, a lot of times we're people pleasing the doubt because we don't trust in ourselves. And one of the transitions that I had to make once I started loving myself is trusting myself, respecting myself. And once I started doing that, I energetically, automatically started giving more benefits to the discernments. And that discernment was to be patient, to be present, and to really process what I was taking in. And I think a lot of times, if we don't have discernment, we'll go for anything. We'll literally believe anything anybody tells us, anything we hear, if it even sounds good, and especially in the performance of it. You know, a lot of times when we're being deceived through emotions. And those emotions that we're being deceived by is usually by somebody who can perform that deception very well with a lot of passion. And this is something I noticed with narcissists. Narcissists are really good at lying because they can make the lie really sound like like the truth. They're really good at making a lie seem true. And we've been conditioned as a society with these governments and all these other so-called authority institutions to be given a lie with a great performance that deceives us. And that's why cognitive dissonance is something that's rampant, because people start taking on these belief systems that are all based on lies, but they swear they're true. And then what happens is the ego, as it's constructed to do, will protect that. And it will fight to the very death to protect that thing that thinks is true, but it's really protecting the lie. And discernment, for me, from my perspective, is when you can trust in the inner wisdom instead of trying to get something validated outside of yourself. And I think that discernment breeds validation within, to where you can trust that thing called intuition and trust that God force, that source energy within, to where you trust that processing what you're experiencing, opposed to you just blindly accepting something outside of you that was projected onto you. And that's the best way I can explain it when it comes to discernment, because I think the some of us are doing this consciously and unconsciously, and it really doesn't matter whether we're doing it consciously or consciously. The fact that it's happening is a good thing. Is that we're trusting in ourselves. We're trusting to have the discernment of the divine within us. And one of my favorite things to say is that I, I honor humanity, but I remember that I come from divinity. And that remembrance is my discernment and how I process this human experience as the multidimensional being that I truly am.
We're talking with Aura, the informationalist of the Network of Awareness. That link will be in the description below if you guys want to follow more of this consciousness thinking. I think this is a nice change of pace for the conscious collective, as opposed to me screaming and ranting and raving about, we need to be more aligned. We need to work harder. We need to be more focused. So I am honored that he has taken the time to share the perspective of his journey. And if you guys want more of these conversations, just let me know. Let me know. I like to expand our consciousness. I don't like to make our movement, our understanding inclusive. I like to expand it out and see different perspectives and points of views, and to help us evolve and help us grow. So if you want more, I think we're getting more of other people and less of me. Wow, that didn't take long. That went left fast. Less of me and more of other people. Okay, all right. That's enough of that. Let's get back. When we were talking about you mentioned about how children are often that's where the misleading comes from. I think I mentioned to the collective about how that Santa Claus conspiracy of being told that lie contributes to that uncertainty that you go through life with, right? You're brought into your portal into this plane of existence, and then you actually are given a name, an identity, as you said earlier, a race, and all that is given to you before you can really have any self-sovereignty over self. And this brings in that doubt and that confusion that continues to plague you the rest of your life. But let's switch over to star seeds, as we in the conscious collective understand that we are star seeds, which means that we have the consciousness of other beings, right? And I want to get your take on um, the concept of star seeds. And do you think that each one of these star seeds has a purpose and a mission in this evolution of humanity? You know, my thoughts on it, as I mentioned yesterday, that we're here, and it doesn't take many of us, but the awakening of a number of us is enough to raise the whole consciousness of humanity. So I want you to expand on that as my community abandons me, and and really enjoy our conversation about this topic. So let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, as star seeds, we are we're ethereal light souls. So this human thing is just an experience for that ethereal light soul, but it's an experience within this realm. And I'm going to try to explain this for people to understand, because sometimes when you talk about this, there's not really a language for it. Sometimes you can't really describe when we're talking about star seeds, because it's something that really has to be felt within. But I can tell you that as star seeds, as we all are star seeds here, we consciousness evolved from the Lyra constellation a long time ago, long time ago, within this particular universe. And in that development of consciousness evolving, there's different entities that are spread throughout the cosmos. And the humanoid, let's just say the humanoid, has developed in through its different stages. But as ethereal light souls that we are, we're actually transporting that light into these different phases and stages of evolution within not just humanity, but when you think about star seeds, you talk about Arcturus constellation, you got the Pleiades, you got Lyra, you got the Draco, you got Antares, and many more, right, that I can list. We, as the ethereal light soul, we are having those experiences in lifetimes, because energy never dies, right? It only transforms. So that energy is like, that's why people can people are starting to remember, like my wife. My wife had a clear vision, a vivid one, of her and I being these tall blue beings. Now it could have been Andromedans or it could have been blue avians, but we were these tall light beings, and we had a child, and our planet was being destroyed, and we had to find a way to evacuate that planet, that realm. Now that's just one vision she had, but we're all having we've all had these experiences where the ethereal light soul that we are inhabited a particular other dimension aside from the one that we're inhabiting now. And what happens through this process of remembrance is that we are tapping into our abilities, but those abilities didn't come from the human experience. It's being brought to the human experience. So, for example, I came here knowing how to write since a kid. I started writing poetry at like 5 or 6 years old. I wasn't taught how to do it. I just started writing what I was witnessing and observing, and it just would come out really well for a 5 or 6 year old. So the question is, where did that come from? Nobody taught me that. Well, that was an ability that was developed in another realm, in another constellation. Some of us are very empathic. Some of us are very compassionate. Some of us have a deep, keen sense of intuition and many more abilities. That's why I always say that we don't have gifts. We come here with abilities. Gifts are given, abilities are formed and developed. We are all coming here as multidimensional beings with a lot of ability, and we're tapping into that as star seeds, as a collective, that we've had all these different experiences in different realms, and we're bringing it here. And from my perspective, as star seeds, we have a choice. And it's two things. With those abilities that we awaken to and remember, right, through the process of remembrance, we have the ability to be a gift to the world, or we have an ability to be the curse to the world. But when I say world, I'm talking about ourselves. So when we are cursed to the world, we're cursed to ourselves, right? Because if we're cursing ourselves internally, that projects outwardly, and that's the reality that's experienced. And then everybody else gets to experience it. And same thing with us being a gift to ourselves with the abilities that we have, where, we're more positive within, then that projects itself out and benefits others as well as a gift. And this whole starseed concept, a lot of people are throwing shade on it because the fear-based matrix and these archons don't want you to know that what you are is not just this human experience. It's so much more. It's so expansive. That's why when people have NDE experiences, many times they'll say that they go back to oneness, and they're observing everything that's happened here, and they can see the illusions playing themselves out, and they get to see that that's just an experience, but that's not the true reality. And it's same thing with when we go to sleep. You mentioned this yesterday. I have deep episodes on this about how when we go to sleep, we are experiencing the true reality, which is in the astrals. And when we wake up, we're waking up into a dream. That's why people say, in a very cliche way, they'll say, "Hey, how you doing, brother?" "Oh, I'm just living the dream." And that statement is true because we are living the dream. We are living within a dream. And it's our responsibility to make the most of it. Because if we don't, and we allow this as star seeds, by the way, if we allow for the fear to creep in and to be projected on us and us start owning it, then that dream now that we wake up to is not a dream anymore. Now we're waking up to a nightmare. But either way, it still serves its purpose. But as star seeds, and just to kind of sum it up, because I could talk about this for days, as star seeds, we're multidimensional. What it means to be a star seed is that we have acquired different energy from different realms, and the ethereal light soul is taking it all in. It doesn't dispose of this. This is all being accumulated as souls that we are, so that when we do have the human experience, all that is playing itself out is that energy that has shaped us in other dimensions and other realms. And I think that more people are becoming aware that that's what we are as star seeds. We come from the cosmos. We come from source energy as ethereal light, and as that star that is ethereal light, now we're planted here as a seed within this darkness, within this soil of earth, of Mother Gaia, Mother Earth. And now that we're planted here, we grow, we spread our roots, we plant ourselves, and we flourish and we blossom, or we don't, right? Sometimes, just like a plant, if it doesn't get properly watered and get the proper sun, it starts to wrinkle and crinkle. It's the same thing for us as star seeds. If we're not getting, if we're not getting, if we're not embracing the proper nourishment, and we're not watering that seed doesn't grow. But the ones who do water it and get the proper light and all that stuff and become more self-aware, we become more expansive as star seeds. And that's why back, I remember when I used to talk about star seeds about 25, 30 years ago, people was like, "You're crazy." But that isn't the case no more. If you notice, when we talk about star seeds now, it's a lot more welcome because the collective is waking up to their potential and who they really are, instead of what they told they are when it comes to humans. This human thing is just an experience. It's just an experience because everybody knows that once you leave this human body, what's left is that 22 grams of weight that is light, that now is going to transport itself to another experience. And it could either go through that white light tunnel and get its soul recycled to have another human
No,
experience,
no,
or
no.
hold on a second,
Yeah.
or it can turn away from that light and go back to another realm and have its experience.
I was gonna say avoid that light. That light is the soul recycle, and those that know.
That's
So
right. Yeah. That means turning
yeah,
away from the light and going into the void. The only reason the void is because it's not very much occupied. That's the only reason it's the void. The darkness is the light. Okay, that light to that moon construct tunnel that the archons built, that is a false light matrix. The true light is within the darkness.
yeah, right. And I've shared that often about the moon being an artificial satellite, but I think that we're finding out in so many ways that the things they try to discredit are actually the truth, and there's a purpose for their discrediting it to keep you locked into this lower dimensional concept. And it's interesting the way that you phrase it about living the dream. I often phrase it as that our astral existence is actually our correct existence, no matter how wigged out or crazy it seems. And we come to back when we wake up, we come back to this plane to learn our lessons to continue to grow. That's particularly how I like to phrase it. That we are here to learn, we are here to understand, we are here to master energy. But I want to talk more about this concept of consciousness because I think people keep boiling down their entire existence into this physical body, and the consciousness is something that doesn't get a lot of conversation about because it's, I guess it may be hard for people to understand that you are more than your physical form, right? There's something else to you that aligns directly to source, being the ultimate consciousness. So I wanted to get your ideas and your thinking around consciousness. Can you delve a little bit more deeper into that?
Yeah, for me, consciousness has always just been the energy of intelligence. It's the intelligence of the creation of the creator. It's the we talk a lot about water having memory. We don't talk enough about how light has memory. And when I think about consciousness, I think it's about the light and the different waveforms of it that all have an intelligence. And we're all tapping into that. That's why that phrase, there's nothing new under the sun, is so true. There really isn't. There's this consciousness that's flowing. I used to, when I was growing up in the Bronx back in the days, I used to be like, yo, I'd be creating something out of nothing. I'd be making things happen. I always create something out of nothing. As I got older and started to do in my studies and started to understand what consciousness really is, I had an epiphany. I was like, wait a second. The more I learned about consciousness, I said, okay, I'm not creating something out of nothing. I'm in a co-creative process of bringing awareness to something that's already there that now I'm aware of, but it's always been there. So that creation's always been there, but it takes a co-creative process in order to be aware that it's there and when it forms. And that it really opened up my eyes to what consciousness is, because I remember Esther Hicks talking about this when she channels Abraham, that Abraham stated, and Abraham is a bunch of different multidimensional beings. Uh, and they basically described how the consciousness is this steady stream of flow of energy that's always ever present. And either you are tapped in and giving attention to that, and only time you're not in that stream is when you are giving attention to fear, is when you break that signal. And for me, that's what consciousness is. Now, another way too is, and I want to talk about the collapse, right? Because remember you said about the collapse of 3D, and I want to relate this to what, in regards to consciousness. There's the collapse that's happening of 3D, of this 3D density right now, and people are feeling it. They may not be aware, but they can feel it energetically. And people are sensing it right now, Baba. They're sensing that in the flow of consciousness that they're taking in more, they're sensing that these structures that they were taught to rely on are starting to feel unstable. And it's not necessarily that these structures are collapsing dramatically the way people imagine something to collapse when you hear that word, right? People think of like the Twin Towers falling down or something. But we're talking about a collapse in the sense that the assumptions behind them are being questioned. So for generations, people were told that certain institutions were beyond scrutiny and certain narratives were beyond debates, but certain systems were simply the way the world worked, and that's not the case. Human consciousness, right? And I don't even want to put the word human in front of it. Let's just say consciousness, because everything is of consciousness. The animals, the plants, the rocks, everything. And that consciousness doesn't remain static forever in the way we engage with it as humans. Eventually, people begin asking deeper questions. And the more we tap into it, we start to realize all these contradictions, which really, from my perspective, a contradiction is when you can notice a contradiction in this world, you're actually observing a glitch in the matrix. And then people start comparing what they were told with what they're actually experiencing. And when enough people start doing that at the same time, it creates these energetic, psychological, let's call them psychological foundations of those systems of so-called authority start to begin to shift. And they shifting because of our awareness within this consciousness. And that collapse that we were talking about yesterday um, is the collapse of unquestioned belief that's now being questioned. And when beliefs change, these structures that are built on the belief inevitably change as well. And the consciousness that's always been present there is now, how can I explain this? It's now being it's now being expanded. It's being empowered. It's like it's generating more power than it was before, but it's always had the power. It's just that we weren't giving it attention, right? Because we are trapped in a matrix they want you to consume. It's like buy this, buy that, give attention to this newsreel, this war, this dysfunction. And people are starting to say, wait a second, maybe I should stop giving attention, stop giving the consciousness that's flowing to me attention to these things that don't serve me and that really don't even serve any purpose, and start applying and giving attention to that consciousness within. And that's what's, in my opinion, is creating a collapse. So that's to me what consciousness is. It's this eternal energy that flows, that is ever present, and it's different forms of light waves. And the more we raise our frequency, the more we tap into that consciousness that's ever present, that's flowing through us. It's a part of us, but it isn't us. Just like the human experience is an experience, but the true essence of us is a soul. The soul is what's connected to the consciousness, because the soul is one with that consciousness and that energy. That's why I don't think God is one singular thing. God is a creative force that always has been, always will be. You can never get to the nucleus because it's always been there. It's not something that you find, it's something that you feel. It's something that you're a part of when it and which goes back to experience. I know I was long-winded on that one. It's
No,
like
no,
I'll
no,
get
no,
there.
no, 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 no. I mean, I think that's we're gonna go into that a little deeper. I just want to do a little housekeeping really quick. If you guys could thumbs up this video, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and become part of this collective awareness, this conversation. If you are enjoy being watered as a star seed like this, the link to the Network of Awareness will be in the description, so you guys can show support and love and continue to water yourself so that you continue to grow and expand. That's the whole point we touched on earlier. And I also want to say, take advantage of this deep knowledge that's just being shared right now. Ask questions of Aura, so we can get that type of perspective and view. So don't be afraid. I know I generally share one way, open ears, listen, but we have an opportunity to engage with another deep thinker. All right. So that you can expand your knowledge base. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I think Nicole is talking about the buzzing in the ears. I think it was related to what you were talking about, consciousness. I tend to believe that source is always communicating, always talking with us, and that comes in different forms. And if you're open to it, right, you receive it in the way that your framework receives it. Some people see visions, some people see synchronicities, some people may, to me, the buzz in the ear is almost a signal that's the next thing, or you're about to get an important message. Be more aware of what's coming. What are your thoughts about the buzzing in the ears? And the collective, feel free to ask questions, and we'll put them to Aura and try to get more understanding in our journey here in Life Source.
In my remembrance and in my process of self-discovery,
Okay.
when it comes to the ringing of the ears, let me tell you something I've been experiencing for a long, long time. And it's all frequency based when it comes to consciousness. It's all coming from source, and it comes in different ways, like you were saying. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's our ancestors speaking to us, but it's speaking in a language of frequency and energy. So that ringing of the ear is how our bodies, our electromagnetic bodies, are receiving that frequency, and it's different pitches of it. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high, sometimes it happens in the left ear, sometimes some people, like I've had spiritual teachers tell me that if it happens in the left ear, I think somebody said it comes from source, and then when it's in the right ear, it's the ancestors warning or trying to share a message at that particular time. There's a lot of different perspectives. Some people say it's angels that are speaking and communicating with us, but it all stems back to that energy of consciousness, because it is a frequency. And depending on where your spirit ritual the way your spirit ritual is connecting energetically will determine that pitch of the frequency and what that frequency is. Because some people, when they get a ringing in the ear, sometimes it's a warning that you shouldn't be doing what you're about to embark on. And sometimes it's a kind of like an applause, kind of like a recognition thing that you're on the right path, or you're in, wherever you're doing. From my perception, these ringing of the ears, it's all frequency based. And wherever our spear ritual, right, which is the vertebrae, the nervous system, whatever frequency that is operating on, a lot of times determines what that signal that's coming in the ringing of the ear. Now, what that is for the individual that's experiencing the ringing to determine and to really tap into. And sometimes the best way to get that message on what that ringing of the ear is from my studies and my research is through meditation, is to meditate on it and allow that frequency to just be the ever-present signal, and get rid of anything else that can distract you from that, and let it give you the message that is there for that ringing. um it's very interesting about the ringing in the ears. That's something that's been a topic of discussion for decades now, and there's a lot of different interpretations of it. I'm just giving you a perspective. It's more of a, even probably like a opinion of what I think, because I can't really say what that is. I just know that when I experience it, what do I go into? Discernment. I discern the ringing in the ears.
Again, I am totally grateful that we have an opportunity to talk with Orra the Infromationalist. Give you a little backstory. I want you guys to check out the link, and please show the support if you want more of this knowledge and more of this guidance. We don't have answers, we seek truth. And so everyone has a perspective that if they have spent some time self-examining themselves, then they have some version of that truth to bring to the whole picture. So I'm definitely am honored to have Aura, the informationalist, part of this conversation. We're going into our second hour. I'm going to try to squeeze as much knowledge and understanding and information from this conversation as I can. If you guys have any questions, this is a great time to uh, put it forth and see a different perspective on it that may align or may not align, but it will give you an opportunity to really connect. So, a little background, I came across this divine being doing a ascension workshop through a mutual, and they came down and we had a great experience through that ascension workshop. And the thing is that I know social media allows us to reach out and maybe come across people and ideas that we don't normally have in our full circle. A lot of times we are isolated in our families. A lot of us are black sheep. We're born in and we're portal into these environments because we are supposed to break these curses and change things. And so we find ourselves isolated, but community is important. And to me, community only happens face to face, right? I really need to be in the presence of someone to feel their energy, to see if their eyes do that lizard slit, if they're even a real character. If you know about AI and all these, they had this Jim Carrey stand-in theory going around, conspiracy going around now. The people are not who you think they are. And there's a lot of, this is why that discernment is going to be very important. But to me, community, that actual connection with each other, right? Where we can feel each other energy, we can look at each other in the eyes, we can touch, right? Do you know that when children are growing up and you tell them don't touch this, they don't touch that, don't touch this, they're supposed to touch. They are supposed to touch because they learn tactile, right? That's the way that they learn about their environment, is by touching, right? We're supposed to be engaging with each other. So it's always important that we come together in some shape or form, as opposed to being part of this gatekeeping media that keeps us separated with the illusion of being connected. You don't have that many friends on Facebook or TikTok or whatever you think these people are at, right? Those are not your friends, but that is the illusion that makes you settle down and say, oh, well, then I'm expanding, I'm connecting with people. But you're not. You're more isolated than ever. So that being said, I want to get into maybe some hidden knowledge, some hidden secrets that you may have come across in your journey to help with discernment, to help with understanding. I'm always about doing the work, right? If you are doing the work, right, and you're clearing your chakras and you're doing practices that are engaging your energetic body, right, that aids in your discernment of all the lies and the hidden truths. I want to get your take on that. So let's go into more of the abstract part of spirituality, if you came across any, or you have some ideas or some things you want to share about that.
Can you kind of like pinpoint that question more, because it was you generalized it, and it's like it was a lot.
Okay, well, when we look at different things that are going on in the world, right? I
Yeah.
always say there's layers to it. There are layers to it, right? There's a surface level. Let's take a general conspiracy, the Epstein files, that's been a topic on my platform, right? We look at the horrible things that has occurred, and the things that are done, right? And then people normally stop there, right? They normally stop there. But I came across two things that kind of triggered me to look a little deeper, right? The first one was a comedian talking about all the misspellings in the Epstein emails, right? And that was curious to me because we know most of these people are very highly educated, right? They come from good
Supposedly.
schools. They they should have excellent grammar, right? Why would they misspell so many things? And also, why doesn't spell check catch a lot of this for them? And I propose that those are actually codes to let you know that this is a message, a secret message about something, whatever they're relating it to, right? And so the second part of my conspiracy theory is that there's the idea that if you want to bury a body, right, you bury the body 8 feet deep, right, and then on top of that you bury an unalived dog. So whenever the canines are triggered on the dead body, you dig it up, you find the dead dog or the unalived dog, and you don't dig any deeper. So I am supposing or proposing that the Epstein files are actually a clue to how they maneuver and manipulate what we call the matrix, and
Mm.
how they manage communication between each other, as opposed to, just outright saying things. And I just want to preface that about um, redlining in Chicago. If people are not familiar with redlining in Chicago, it was an idea of, it was a policy of only selling to blacks in a certain area, but not selling homes to blacks in different areas. All right. And I'm wondering, was that like in a meeting? Was that, how do you even communicate something like that if it's not under subterfuge and encoded messages? Because you're not going to just come and put like that in a policy. You're not going to just say that out loud. So I think there's a lot of hidden meanings, or hidden directives in the Epstein emails that we have just stopped at. Oh my God, they're trafficking, and haven't looked any farther, as opposed to maybe this is how they communicate. Maybe this is how they coordinate. Maybe this is how they actually govern a lot of things that we are subject to. So I was wondering if you came across anything of nefarious communications, or hidden messages, or anything that would aid us in our journey here on Earth plane.
Everything is symbolic. Everything is symbology. That's the hidden message. It's all symbols, and that's the language. It's the language of symbols. Symbols, colors, all create energetic frequencies, and we're all tapped into it as in these electromagnetic bodies. The best way, like, and let me just put this on a side note. I'm just going to say this. A lot of these factions that are into trafficking and all that, they don't bury bodies, they cremate them. Just to let everybody know. That's why you can't find a lot of bodies, because they get cremated. All right. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But I wanna, when we talk about knowledge, right? I want to talk about the language of dimensions, because and I want to stick to the 5D consciousness and going from 3D to 5D, and how the 3D is collapsing. I think one of the reasons conversations about 3D and 5D create so much confusion is because people sometimes interpret language too literally. And many spiritual communities talk about this 3D, 5D, and consciousness, and about hidden knowledge. A lot of the knowledge is hidden in plain sight. A lot of it is hidden in plain sight. And that's why when I heard you saying about these people, it made me think about my United Shenanigans of America series, where, everybody thinks United States is this great country when it really isn't. And when you were saying these people are educated, I said supposedly, because you'd be surprised. A lot of these people that we see in these positions of so-called power and authority are some of the most unintelligent, dumbest people out here in the world. But they give this image through a performance that there is some knowledge there, and we just automatically believe it to be true, when it's quite the opposite, right? But going back to what I was saying about the 3D to 5D, is that people, when it comes to knowledge, people interpret knowledge different from others. And we all know, and we've heard that cliche saying, that knowledge is not power unless it's applied. You can know about something or heard about it, and somebody could say, hey, this is the way things are. And you're like, hey, now I know about that. But that's not power, because unless you're applying what you've been told that you say you now know, is it really knowledge? And I'm just saying the answer is no. Now, going back to the language of dimensions, we're talking about how we interpret reality. The 3D mindset is rooted in survival thinking. So we lack knowledge because we're too occupied into giving all of our attention to things outside of ourselves, which is this consumption, and that a lot of us are entrained to accept as the reality. And And in regards to the 3D rooted survival thinking, you got competition, which is part of survival. You got scarcity, and you got domination. This worldview says that life, I like to call life lessons and frequency energy, by the way, but they say that life is essentially a struggle for resources and power. Life is a struggle. Religion projects this a lot. Religion, you always used to hear the pastor say, you know, long struggle, struggle, like wearing it like a badge of honor. But as awareness expands and people are starting to become more knowledgeable of who and what they are and going within in this age of enlightenment, people begin realizing that survival is only one layer of existence when we're talking about layers of consciousness. Beyond survival, there's meaning. Beyond the competition, there is cooperation. Beyond the control, there is a responsibility. Now, going back to beyond competition, there is cooperation. I said this on my live yesterday when I was interviewing you. Is if anybody's ever noticed, sports, all about competition, especially team sports, even the individual sports, all about competition. You have an opponent. And what they do is they pit us against each other. But the hidden knowledge, right? Since we're talking about hidden knowledge, the hidden knowledge in when you see two opposing forces or two teams of human beings coming together to battle each other for domination to win a prize or a reward or a trophy or whatever accolade, the hidden knowledge in that a lot of us don't perceive is the fact that those teams have to operate in damn near perfect cooperation in order for them to succeed in beating or dominating or winning over the opponent. So, beyond this control is the responsibility. So, what some people call 5D consciousness might simply be humanity remembering that we are capable of relating to one another through awareness rather than through fear. And the hidden knowledge in that is that everything is in plain sight. Everything is through symbols, but it's how we interact with that symbology. One of my favorite ways of describing that, I heard it from George Green, and it really blew my mind. You know the FedEx symbol, right? You're very well
Mhm.
aware of that.
Right.
Were you aware that the FedEx symbol has an arrow in it? Did you
Yeah.
know that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you first saw FedEx for the first time, you saw the arrow.
No, it was pointed out that it was an error in it. Right.
Thank you. But you see, your subconscious though saw that arrow.
Right.
Your consciousness didn't catch up to it until somebody said, "Hey, there's an arrow there." And then now, every time you see it, you can't unsee the arrow, right?
Yeah.
That's the hidden knowledge. That's how they do us. This is how they do us dirty, right? This is how we get done dirty. This symbology is always ever present in everything we're interacting with. But a lot of times that symbol is affecting us on the inner consciousness, which doesn't discriminate, by the way. And a lot of times the forward consciousness or the outer consciousness, that is not processing it. Why? Because that is not looking for that symbol. It's being affected by it, but it's not looking for it because it's distracted doing something or giving attention to something. Once it catches up, now you start to see that in everything. If you start applying that awareness, you start to see the hidden knowledge in everything. And you start to see how that knowledge, that awareness is hidden in plain sight. It's right in front of our face. And until we become aware of it, we're actually not knowledgeable because we're not applying it. But once you become aware of it, you can apply that knowledge, and that's where the true power lies.
And see, this is why these conversations are important because they bring a different perspective, right? And I thought that was a very good explanation, but I'm more conspiratory in my thinking. And I did a video called the Black Eye Club. I don't know if you're familiar with the Black Eye Club,
Yeah, the
but a
Panda
lot
Eye
of
Club.
celebrities and influential people have this black eye. And
Right.
I propose that they're circumventing the growth through some other process. And so they're trying to achieve the same enlightenment, but not going through the correct journey for that enlightenment. Right.
Well,
So
they're doing different type of rituals.
yeah, and
Yeah,
ritual based as opposed to divine journey. Okay. And
right.
so in that thinking, I'm proposing that what you're talking about is for those that are more spiritually inclined to take that journey, to be aware, to be open. I don't believe, or I don't trust that that is the path of people who are doing a lot of the negative things, or operating the matrix currently now, that that is the journey they take. You use the analogy of a sports team, and you notice, like when they're playing football, the coach covers his mouth when he's talking, when he's communicating, right? And to me, that's symbolic that they are not tapped in as we propose to be in our journey, that we become enlightened in our journey, which is a long, tedious process that goes lifetimes to be that highly conscious and aware, where where symbolism and things mean more to you. And the only reason that you can see the arrow in the FedEx symbol is because you're open to that, seeing that. But those that don't choose that path, right, have other ways of communicating because they want to circumvent that journey back to light, and they want to keep it within the realm of their control. And so I propose that this is why they're not using the same means. When you speak of consciousness and awareness, and they're anti-woke. They said it out loud. They said it in all their conversation. They Woke is a negative thing. We thinking they're talking about politically, but it's actually a spiritual message that they're not woke. They don't want to be woke. They don't want to be connected to source. They want to be separated from source. And that's why I propose that they communicate and they operate in a totally different way than we propose that we continue to operate in, which is being open, which is being aware, which is expanding our consciousness. That is not the way they operate. And that's why I think it's so many hidden meanings and hidden societies, and hidden hand signals, because that's the way they operate, as opposed to where we say we operate. Like people assume, and we talked about this yesterday, that AI is something new. AI is only a copy of ancient intelligence of Earth star. If you look at Earth from a different place, it's a star. And as you said earlier, Earth is actually a consciousness, right? It's Gaia. It has its own form of consciousness, right? And we tap into that consciousness, right, to gain any knowledge, any connection to what other conscious beings, right? They have put this.
It's a water based consciousness, by the way.
Exactly. They have put this being into place, right? That or this system into place that is the gatekeeping of that knowledge. So now when you go on AI and you ask things, you get all these gatekeeping responses, as opposed to the true enlightenment if you were to tap into Earth Star as we were meant to be. But that's just my perspective on it, and I appreciate your view on it. And you can see that these conversations are very important as we expand people's awareness and expand their minds about how their journey is unfolding. I want to go back to a question really quickly about cremation, just to answer really quickly about it, right? I don't, because you mentioned cremation and you mentioned that a lot of trafficking victims are cremated. Because to me, this is just a suit, a clothes. This body that I'm in is not real. I don't really care about cremation or burial. I would prefer to be cremated, really. But I just wanted, just because the question was asked, what was your view on it before we move on to the next question? We have about 30 more minutes left in this conversation. So if you wanted to answer that question, if anyone has any other questions, please
About
put them in the chat.
cremation.
What about
Yeah, these
cremation? Somebody wanted to know about cremation.
well, this is the thing. A lot of times these cold cases, some people call them the Illuminati, whatever, but these factions, right? These Luciferian factions, they're very wealthy factions, and they are very interconnected in the industries that exist here. When it comes to hospitals, when it comes to funeral homes, which is what I'm going to bring up, when it comes to a lot of these institutions, You don't people don't realize is that all you need is, and David Icke talks about this and many others, where you only need one or two people within an institution to be in a particular position of power to make that institution work, to cover up whatever needs to be covered up. So the people on the bottom, they're just doing their job. And I know for a fact that a lot of the reasons why these people disappear, and it's not just children, it's not just the people that are trafficked, it's everybody that gets targeted. All right. The Clintons are really good at this. What these factions do is when they need to eliminate somebody, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But the reason why you're not finding bodies, because people say, where are these people? Like, where are these bodies going? Now, granted, a lot of them are being consumed. Okay. So they're being consumed. That's why you can't find them. But when it comes to eliminating somebody or getting rid of evidence, they don't bury them, because bury means that you can find it. You can pull up those fossils, DNA strands left behind, and you can find out who these people are. So what do? They cremate them. And there's actually a documentary on Netflix about an actual mortuary in Los Angeles that had a very long-standing relationship with certain factions of people that would send bodies over there to be cremated so that there was no evidence to be found. And this is something that's been going on for a long time, people. And when I say a long time, we're talking about since cremation started. So, I don't know when cremation started, but ever since it did, these factions have been getting rid of bodies like that for decades. So, hope that answers that question.
Well, let's because it's going down a very interesting rabbit holes, and I like these rabbit holes. All right. Sheer Lives was saying that she's scared of cremation, uh, but was curious about all methods and ideas. And the reason I wanted to address it is because to me, it two things. It manifests that the idea that the body is something that you are the body. And so to me, that focuses too much attention on the body. That's why I said I don't care about cremation or anything of that
Yeah.
kind, because the
Yeah.
body is not the focus of us. And if you're
No,
thinking
because
about the body, I'm sorry.
those 22 grams that leaves the body, that ethereal light, that's the true essence of what we are. The body's just a host and a vessel temporarily. It's not something that's permanent.
Right. And that's my point. So I don't care
Yeah.
anything about the body, and I don't focus on the body because I understand that I'm something other than the body. Right. And that's part of the separation they want to kind of force feed you, that you are your body. Right. All this working out, all this,
Right. Yeah.
you're this color or you're this sex. It's about the body. And so when people focus on what happens to the body, they're still trapped into thinking they're the body. Okay, so that's one reason I wanted to bring it up. And the second thing about that was that she did mention a good point about empty, that a lot of coffins are empty when they finally dig them up. And
Yes.
I
And
was watching this video that said of that the graveyards are not big enough of all the people that have died. Right, they don't make new graveyards, so how they keep putting the same, you would run out of room, was the proposition of this video. And that was interesting.
I,
That Go ahead.
I was just going to mention something. How about the bodies that are in coffins but have no organs in them and are stuffed with paper?
Yeah,
That's another one.
well, we know that happens. That's actually has been proven to be true. All right, but we can go down these rabbit holes, and Baba loves a good rabbit hole. We're talking to Orra The Infromationalist of the Network of Awareness. His links will be in the description. Please check out his podcast and conversation. I am honored that he has taken time to share his journey and his perspective with the Conscious Collective, that we all may gain what is beneficial to us. Some of this may resonate with you, some of it may not, but it does not mean that it is not important to hear, because it may become important at a later time in your journey. So please thumbs up this video. I think you guys, like they like to say, Mikey likes it. So we're gonna reach out to other people and and see what other conversations we can spark to aid in our conscious growth. We're finding out that we were right about a lot of things. You were that black sheep, you were all by yourself, and now people are coming to you and giving you apologies and giving you flowers and saying that, oh, maybe you have a point here. And they're awakening, because I often says, when you turn on the light, everybody in the room sees. You're not the only one that sees. If you turn on a flashlight, you shine that flashlight, anyone looking can see the light too. So doing the work on yourself, raising your consciousness, raising your vibration, right? Everyone sees that light. Everyone is eyes are open near you. Family members, friends, co-workers. They start, some things start to trigger in them. They start to have a better understanding. This is how we collectively raise the consciousness of humanity, by doing the work, by expanding our own consciousness, and we become the light. And this is what's said by that term, in my opinion. You are the light of the world. Christ consciousness, you become the light of the world. And that's the work that we're doing here. So as we have about 15, 20 more minutes, and I'm trying to get more information, right? Let's talk about responsibility, the collective responsibility. And maybe we can kind of tie that into, how do you become more aligned in your purpose and your mission? And do you have a collective responsibility, as you see it, Aura, to the greater collective, or to humanity in general?
Yeah, I call it the inner shift. Shifting your attention within, instead of having it go without or from out. And yeah, I think that we do have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to ourselves, which gives us a responsibility to each other. I call it having meaningful connections with your reflections, so you gain elevation. But it's all about being more self-realized within this collective. One of the things that I've always tried to emphasize in these discussions is that awakening is not something that only happens on a global level. It begins with the individual. Every time a person pauses long enough to observe their own thinking, or every time somebody realizes that the emotional reactions they were conditioned to have are not the only way to interpret this reality. Same thing with someone who chooses awareness instead of this automatic reaction. There's a moment of awakening. And when those moments begin happening across millions of individuals, they accumulate into something much, much larger. And that's why that much larger that's happening right now, it's happening. It's happening in these cultural shifts that we're having. It's changing in how society thinks about itself. We are thinking about ourselves in much, much different ways than we were thinking about ourselves 50 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. We're looking at ourselves in a different way, thinking of ourselves in a different way. And what's happening is we're seeing these real transformations that are happening, that don't start with the governments and don't start with the institutions. So there's a lot of people that are having these inner transformations, where more people are becoming more conscious of the beliefs that have been guiding their own perceptions. And now those beliefs are being done away with. That's why you have a lot of people that are still going through cognitive dissonance, but cognitive dissonance only lasts but so long. You're going to have to make a decision on what you now know to be true, even though it was hard for you to accept it. A lot of people are now accepting it more willingly. So what's happening is, instead of people looking for governments, right, to say, what is our future going to look like? They're not doing that. Their future and the way they're perceiving on how it's going to look like is all dependent on what they're going to do for themselves, what they're going to do, how they're going to engage and interact with so-called society or the world. And that's what's making the major difference. It's an inner shift that's happening. And that's why people are not worried about religion like they used to. Religion, let me tell you something. Religion, and I know you know this, but for the audience, if y'all notice, religion does not have the same authority it once had. It just doesn't. The seats are emptying slowly but surely. Same thing with politics. A lot of people ain't voting like they used to. They're starting to realize it's a waste of time, because Govern, we now know when you break down the etymology of government, it is the governing of mental. And people are saying, wait a second, I don't need you to govern my mental. I'm very highly capable of governing my own. It's my temple, it's my mental to govern, and I'm highly capable of doing so. And because of that, the more and more people that have that mindset, that are projecting that mindset into the reality they're experiencing, the reality is shifting. But it's only shifting because the shift is happening within us.
We had a question about seeing things in the cloud. I think we kind of went over communication, the universe speaking in different ways to different individuals. Did you have a quick take on that, really quick, just to address this
Seeing things
question?
in the clouds. Okay, so I've always seen things in the cloud. I did a and this this is gonna be a little bit out there when we talk about star seeds. I did a broadcast, right, on a radio show that I was a part of in New York. It was called the Rockland Report. This was back in the early 2000s. I think it was around 2005 or 6. And I did this whole broadcast for 2 hours on the Amero and how they're destabilizing economic systems and what direction they're going in and how they're going to start unifying these continents to become more centralized, to eventually become a one centralized order system. Very elaborate broadcast I did when I was in my mid to late 20s. And talking about the clouds, I left, I went in my car and I went to go visit a friend because he wanted me to give some mentorship to his cousin who just got out of jail. So as I was driving to meet this brother in the bus stop, I noticed it looking from my car. And then when I got out the car, that I was being followed by a craft. There was actually a spacecraft following me. And then when I looked up, the spacecraft blended itself in the clouds. Um, Very interesting experience. After I had that experience, that broadcast I did, the radio show got shut down for 2 weeks and nobody knew why. We couldn't get a signal on the internet. We couldn't get the internet back up for two weeks after that broadcast. And I was followed by that ship. Um, there's always stuff happening in the clouds. I could tell you that we had Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton, for those of you that don't know, I live in Florida now. Hurricane Milton was the last hurricane we had, the big one here in Florida. With these technologies like HARP and all that, there's a lot of stuff that goes up on the skies, um, amongst other things. And something that I experienced personally was during Hurricane Milton. I heard these sounds that were very like they just didn't sound right. It almost sounded like demons were flying in the air. And I heard these weird sounds, and I knew that that hurricane was artificial. And one of the telltale signs was that the animals around me were not leaving when the hurricane was coming. And let me explain this too. This is how you could tell people if something's natural. If we're having a natural occurrence with the earth cleansing itself, right, like a hurricane does, uh, if you don't see the animals jumping ship and flying south or whatever, that should tell you that whatever's coming is not a natural force of nature. It is something artificial that's being heavily manipulated. And let me tell you, that that stuff with the Hurricane Milton, I was looking at the sky when it was at its peak, when the eye was coming over me, and I saw a triangular spacecraft with a gold orb in the middle of it spinning that flashed in front of my house for like 3 seconds. And then it just disappeared. And this is when the hurricane was at its peak. And I'm like, damn, I wish I could have filmed that, but I was trying to save battery power on my phone because I knew we didn't have no electricity. And I just thought it was so interesting. Now, somebody said the cloud formations. I always see cloud formations. I see dragons, I see hearts, I see faces. And to me, you know what that tells me? Some people say that's your imagination, but I think that's us becoming more aware and raising our frequency so where we can see these things, because a lot of what goes on in the clouds is being affected by plasma, and that's why we're seeing these images. Some people even think that it's entities, but I also think that it's our own awareness revealing itself to us, if that makes any sense. So when you see certain cloud formations and the way you interpret it, it usually provides some meaning to your life, to what's actually going on presently with you.
I've shared that often with the conscious collective, that what we think is occurring outside of us is actually occurring inside of us, and we're
Mhm.
projecting it out. The universe is actually in us, and that's kind of a mind-boggling thing to understand. And the closest thing I can come to share is where, if you watch Doctor Who, the TV show Doctor Who, where the
Yeah.
inside his vehicle was bigger than the outside, right? And when you wrap your mind that the universe, the totality of consciousness, is inside of you, and anything that you're seeing out is you trying to communicate to you what that is. So that's my take on that. And another thing that you mentioned, I think is very important, is watching nature. And I cannot share this enough, and I don't want to take up the little bit of time we have left, right? But we cannot know God, but you can experience God, right? And you experience God through its creation, through source creation, and this is why Native people were more closer to the divine source, because they understood. They weren't in buildings worshiping, they wasn't reading books, they were connecting with creations, the actual, oh, they say this is the word of God. We see the actual uh, creation as being the presence of God, right? And if you connect with creation, then you have that connection to the divine source. And so when you look at animals and how they respond, discernment is a natural process. Is actually more natural to you than not having discernment, right? When you have discernment, that is your natural state. Your psychic abilities are your natural state. That stuff has been taken away from you when you portal into this plane of existence, right? Either through the veil of forgetfulness, or just being indoctrinated early enough and told that everything outside of what is natural to you is unnatural to you, right? So we like to say that, oh, that's supernatural. That's actually natural when you're connected to nature, and it's not supernatural. It's the actual state that you've been lied about. So I just wanted to share that, definitely. But we have a few more minutes, and I wanted to talk about, as this awareness becomes clearer and you start to realize things, and maybe your mind starts to open, right? And you're realizing that you haven't always been told the truth. And as these systems start to collapse and they lose their authority, how do you reprogram your mind? This is the key part that I think a lot of people struggle with, right? Because I do it by not participating in their events, right? People complain about traffic, and they're in traffic, which makes them traffic. Don't participate in the holidays. Don't participate in the systems, right? This is how you deprogram yourself, in my perspective, right? People want to celebrate birthdays. I think birthdays are naturally evil. All they do is rush you through the cycle so they can recycle you again, right? We want to be
Yeah.
older, right? So we
It's a
can get to a
ritual.
certain age. And then once you stop trying to get older, people keep reminding you that you're older, right? And that keeps forcing you to go through this whole process quicker, so they can use that energy again, right? So how do you suggest that the community, that collective people, that are aware, actually start to reprogram their mind and retake back their soul sovereignty?
Well, first of all, I just want to talk about birthdays real quick. I made a joke about this with my mother-in-law when I was in Portugal recently, and I was telling my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who are super connected. I was like, "Listen, don't throw me a birthday party. Don't throw me like I mean, not a party. Don't put a cake for me and have candles." It's like, if you want to sing happy birthday to me, they sang it in Portuguese, which I really didn't understand what they were saying, which was cool. Um, Birthdays are rituals of density, and when we're celebrating that birthday, right? When we're
Deep.
blowing out that candle is significant because it's like you're blowing out your light. You're allowing your light to dim. So you're becoming more denser, and which brings about the age. You know, it's funny. Um, my nephew says that I have Benjamin Button disease because he says I keep looking younger. He's like, Deal, you look like, he's like, every time I see you, you look younger. And I make a joke about this. And I was joking about it with my mother in law. I'm like, the only birthday party I ever had was when I was 7 years old. And I said, I was fortunate that my mother abandoned me. And then my father completely abandoned me. And my mother didn't abandon me physically, but my mother abandoned me emotionally. So I didn't have birthday parties. I only had one birthday party when I was 7. And I think it's because my sister wanted to really throw the party so she can invite her friends and party under my name. And that's all I said I was fortunate that I was neglected in that way because I didn't have birthday parties. So I never really took having a birthday party or celebrating birthdays serious. Me celebrating birthdays back in the days was me going to hang out with my friends and maybe drinking a 40 or, having some lettuce or something like that back in the days. But I never really celebrated. And I was fortunate because I feel like I haven't aged a lot because of it, because I wasn't performing those rituals. A lot of people can't believe how old I am. They're like, nah, you're lying. But I'm like, yeah, look at my license. This is how old I am. And going back to your original question, right? You asked about like, how do we,
Dismantle the programming.
yeah, we do it by doing practical things and by giving attention to what serves our highest good. Give attention to all that matters to you and don't give attention to what doesn't. Anything that fulfills you from a positive energetic frequency, give attention to that. Anything that doesn't, don't put yourself in those situations. But for some reason, there is spontaneity in this universe. So we will experience negative things, or at least what we perceive to be negative. Integrate those things, but don't hold on to them. Trauma is nothing more than a perception that at one time brought us this ease. We experienced something that brought us this ease and we held on to it instead of letting it go and detaching from it and knowing that it was just an experience. What happens with trauma is that something bad happens, right? You get molested as a child, you get raped or something, or you get your butt whooped almost to death. That experience, we hold on to it. That experience becomes the narrative. Narrative equals a spell. The spell we get bounded to, and then that spell becomes our narrative of life. The way I describe it is like in this book of life, we all have our own book of life. And with the trauma, it's like we get stuck on a page and we keep reading that page over and over again for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So the reason why I'm bringing up about trauma is just like with trauma, we have to detach from it. We have to know that it was an experience, but it's not who we are. And it doesn't have to shape who we are because the true essence of who we are has nothing to do with that experience. That experience is like a cloud. Just like I talk about this, emotions are like clouds. They're going to pass on by. Clouds are not meant to be focused on because they're meant to pass on by. We're the sky. And I'm using this as an analogy. You are the sky. The cloud is an emotion. But what happens is when we give too much attention to that cloud, what winds up happening? That cloud gets dark and dark, and now it starts raining on us. That's why you hear that cliche saying when that person walked into the room, it was like they had a dark cloud around them. You've heard that saying. That person got a dark cloud around them. It's because there's so much attached to something that they should have never been attached to. They should have let go a long time ago. So I bring that up because in order for us to continue the awakening process and to become more empowered in sovereignty, we have to embody it by focusing on the things that empower us and only giving attention to that opposed to the things that disempower us, that take our attention away from what matters the most, which is us. That's why I always say that loving myself was the most courageous thing that I ever did. You want to increase in awareness, you want to evolve in your awakening, start loving yourself more, take care of yourself more. Choose the words that you speak very, very Very precise. Be very precise in the words you speak. What I've noticed with me, sometimes the best words to speak are no words. Sometimes it's better to just be present energetically without saying nothing, and that silence can speak far more than any words that can ever come out of my mouth. So my answer to that question, if I was to give a final answer on how we do it, we give attention to what matters and don't give attention to what doesn't. That's how we're going to continue to evolve. Because, you know, I'll give you a perfect example. When we got to dispel these lies, but we got to really dispel them, because the ego will fight to the very death to protect the lie. The ego will fight to the death. We have to disengage from that ego and allow the spirit to guide. A big thing for me, and it has been for quite some time, is this whole thing about Jesus Christ. That you always heard people say, the only way to the life and to the light is through Jesus Christ, right? But that is a lie, because the way to the light and to the life is through your mother, is through the womb. It's through the womb of the divine feminine. And that's just one example that I'm giving, that the way to the truth and to the light of life is through the womb of the divine feminine. Always has been, always will be. So, what we have to stop doing is giving energy and attention to the lie that's already been dispelled. This lie of Jesus Christ is the only way in the life, it's a lie. That is not the way to the life and the light. It's through your mother, and it's always going to be like that. And I think that we have to start breaking the cognitive dissonance of accepting these lies as the truth when they've already been proven not to be, and really start to be responsible and mature in saying that it's not and knowing that it's not. I think the biggest problem too is that people make their ideologies them. So when somebody dispels or disagrees with a particular ideology, that person looks at them like they're disagreeing not with just the ideology, but with them. And if the ideology is wrong, they're wrong. And they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to look wrong. They don't want to feel wrong. They don't even want to think of themselves as being wrong. But it's not about being wrong. It's about being aware. And the more we start to embrace the truth within, and that's also being revealed to us in this age of revelation, the better off we're going to be in this awakening process. Because if not, if we continue holding on to these lies, all we're doing is a disservice to ourselves. That's it. And the more we are, it's like what I was saying earlier. We come here with abilities. We have a choice to be a gift to the world that keeps gifting and giving, or we can be the curse to the world that keeps cursing and dimming. The choice is up to you.
This has been so enlightening, and we're going to end with one last question. We're talking to Orra, the Infromationalist of the Network of Awareness. This has been amazing. We definitely have enjoyed being watered and fed. I just want to say one last thing about those birthdays. A lot of things that you have to do as starseeds or someone that's awakening, you have to lead the paradigm. And of course, that's extremely difficult, because the prison is not in the world; it's in your mind, right? It is releasing and refusing to participate in the foolishness, right? And a lot of people will look at you strange and will laugh at you until, like they say, you're weird until you become the rule, right? And so when we know things and we shed off the falsities and the lies and misdirections, right, and become more our true selves, right? Of course, you're going to stand out, right? You got to understand, as the Matrix as so eloquently explained, right? These people have never seen light. They have never used their real eyes. And so
Yes.
when you're coming into the presence of someone and you're that light, right? They are definitely are going to be shocked by you, and almost to the point of discomfort. I noticed in my own journey that when I walk into a place, right, certain individuals look like the devil just walked in. They have this negativity frown on their face. I'm just as cheerful and happy and positive. But I look and they like, because they can feel that energy and it's abrasive to them in the moment. You know how someone turns on the light in a room and you want to cover your head and you get very angry about it, right? You're
Yeah.
going to experience that as you release the old paradigm and step into your true self, right? So I want to wrap this up for the top of the hour. We're finishing up with Orra the Informationalist. The information will definitely be in the comment section or in the description, how you can tap into this knowledge in more detail. He does a number of series on the podcast and also on TikTok. You can't avoid this information anymore. As much as you want to, it is coming to you loud and clear. All right, because it's part of your journey. If you're here for a reason, right? You
And that
come
reason's
across it
there to
for a
serve
reason.
you.
So thumb up this video, like this video, leave a comment on how much this video enlightened you, right? In the comment section below, so the algorithm can pick it up, right? This has been great. So let's finish off by the top of the hour. Give you some time, and I want to discuss fear versus awareness, right? Sometimes people confuse those two, right? When you're trying to make people aware of something, right? People may assume that it's fear mongering. And what we want to do as spiritual people, as light workers, we never operate in fear. Fear is a lower density vibration, but we do share awareness. All right. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable to people, right? So I want to get your take on it, Orra, and let you finish up this time we have.
Well, okay, so you mentioned paradigm, and fear is no different. It's a paradigm, right? And my wife talks about this a lot, how fear is not a natural state of being. And I agree with that statement because fear has been one of the most powerful organizing forces in human society. It serves a purpose, though. It serves a purpose, but it's a paradigm in the sense that there is a fear of loss. There's the fear of being excluded within society. There's the fear of uncertainty amongst human beings. And fear is a very effective way to guide behavior, because when people are afraid, they become highly reactive, and because they become highly reactive, they become highly predictable and easy to manage through that fear. They become more likely to accept authority without questioning. We saw this happen during COVID-19 back in 2020. There was very little people questioning the narrative that was being projected onto us. Why? Because people was like, "Oh my God, there's a virus, and I need to do something. I need to cover up my face. I need to go get a shot or whatever." But the fear, when people are afraid, not only are they reactive, they become likely to cling to familiar narratives, even when those narratives no longer make sense. Let me say this one more time. People will cling to a familiar fear narrative when those narratives don't even make sense. And I'll give you a perfect example. And I had a a physicist make a joke about this. He was like, Aura, Dr. Rex Crewley. Shout outs to Dr. Rex Crewley. He said, Aura, do you know COVID-19 is very biased? I said, how so? He's like, it only attacks you when you're not eating. He's like, so you're safe to take off your mask when you're eating. COVID-19 won't affect you. It's not going to affect you when you're eating, but once you put that mask on, now it's going to affect you. Now it's back on, and it was, oh man, I almost peed on myself when he said that, but it was so true in the sense of showing how something so ridiculous as you being told that there's some airborne virus that is affecting you and that you got to put a mask on, but when it's time to eat, it's okay to take it off while you're eating, but then put it back on. And a lot of people didn't question that narrative. They went along with it. So fear also has its limits, because human beings are not only capable of fear, they're capable of reflection. They're capable of curiosity. And when curiosity begins replacing the fear, people start examining the systems around them in a very, very, very different way. They begin asking whether those systems are actually serving the well-being of them, the human, the soul, the experience. And at that moment of questioning is often where the transformation begins. So fear is something that serves a purpose, but it's a paradigm that should only be occupied temporarily. You know, just like the ego, a lot of people say the ego is bad. The ego is great for confidence, but when it's too heavily invested, it's going to create an imbalance. And that imbalance can cause a lot of things. It can cause self-righteous indignation. It can separate everybody from that individual. They start thinking they're better. They start demonizing everybody, criticizing everybody, looking at everybody less than themselves. So fear, what's the acronym for fear that I've heard? False emotions appearing real. And let's go back to discernment when it comes to fear. I think discernment is a great antidote and remedy for fear, because instead of reacting to something so quickly out of fear, the discernment allows you to say, hold on a second, wait a minute, let me take a pause for a second. Let me process this and see what all the hype is about, and if I should really be afraid as much as I feel. And usually what winds up happening is that you know that you shouldn't. And that's when the courage comes in and all those other great things that allows us to overcome this fear paradigm. So fear, man, fear is a process, and it's a very temporary one. You know, it's very temporary. It's as temporary as blinking your eye. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it was an excellent response. I apologize. I had to step away. Someone was knocking on my door, and I had to
Oh, no
see
worries.
what that was about again. So I'm gonna have to play back what you said. So, but
Yeah,
I
there's
choose. Go
there's
ahead.
something else I want to say, right?
Go ahead.
There's because I know you're ending the live, so this is my final. Can I say my final word
Yes,
or
sir. Go ahead.
final closing transmission or whatever? So I want to kind of say this last thing for the audience that's here is focus your attention on the next chapter of the consciousness that's flowing through you. So, like, now that we're ending this conversation with Baba, and thank you, Baba, again for having me here, I want to leave people with a simple reflection, right? Because I love having meaningful connections with my reflections because it helps me to gain elevation. And I think that's what we're all doing now. The so called human history, right, has always been shaped by stories that people believe about themselves and the world that they live in. And for thousands and thousands of years, humanity has moved through these different paradigms of understanding. At one time, you mentioned this earlier, we believed that the earth was the center of the universe. Later, we discovered that we are part of this vast galaxy, okay, of infinite consciousness that is unlimited potential, unlimited possibility. And because of that, every time humanity expanded its understanding of reality, something remarkable continues to happen. And it's the way that we see ourselves. It begins to change, it begins to shift. And when the way we see ourselves changes, the way we live changes as well. It just happens, it just comes with the territory. What we may be witnessing right now is another one of those moments. And what I mean is that there's this moment where humanity is beginning to examine the beliefs that have shaped civilization for generations. Now, I don't do beliefs. I haven't done beliefs for a long time. I don't do belief systems. I do frequency. I operate through frequency. There's things that I know and there's things that I don't know. But the things that I don't know, I'll know when I need to know them, and I trust in that divine process. But the thing is that people are starting to examine their beliefs about power, about authority, about identity, and about what it means to be conscious in a universe that is far more mysterious than we can ever imagine. And now, whether somebody describes that shift using the language of dimensions or evolution of consciousness or simply the natural progression of human awareness, there's an underlying idea that still remains the same with us. And that is that we, having this human experience, are capable of growing beyond the limitations of what is considered the past. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the present. One of my favorite slogans that I channeled one day when I was in my late 20s is it came to me and said, when you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning, because it's all about the present. It's all about the eternal now. Growth requires something that cannot be forced upon us. It requires humility. Let me tell you something. The power of humility is powerful. It's one of the reasons I got banned from my first channel on TikTok, talking about humility and the power of it. But also, that not only does it require humility from us, but curiosity, obviously. And it requires for us to have this willingness to examine our own assumptions, but examine those assumptions with honesty. Honesty, because we got to be honest with ourselves. We've been trained to lie to ourselves and to make it sound good. It's like what the late great Bob Proctor said, the worst excuse to have is a good one. So because of the most profound, they call them revolutions, but I don't like that word, because revolution means to go in circles. And if you notice, most revolutions really don't change anything, but evolution does. And that evolution has never been the things that are happening outside of us. It's always about what's happening inside. And I'm talking about the ones that happen inside of the human body, the human mind, the human design. The moment somebody chooses to question what they were told, the moment somebody chooses to seek understanding instead of certainty, and the moment people choose awareness instead of fear, everything is going to change as it is. And if enough people make that choice, the direction of this civilization that's very much unsustainable is going to begin to change to where it is sustainable. So, what I want to leave everybody with is that the real question is not whether humanity is moving from the 3D to 5D or from one paradigm to another. I think the real question is a lot simpler, because love is simple. Unconditional love is simple. I think the real question here is, are we willing to become more conscious of the world that we are creating together? Because the future of humanity will not be determined by the systems that we inherited alone. It will be determined by the consciousness we choose to embody moving forward. And if there is one thing that this story, not his story, but this story, the mystery, has shown us again, again, is that awareness transcends limitations. And once you awaken, awakening has a remarkable way of reshaping the world. That's how powerful we are. We have the power to reshape this world. So what are we waiting for? Let's live in the present and start a new beginning, because that's the journey has never ended, right? We're the never ending story. We just got to remember that we are, and continue on that journey of self-discovery that leads to self-mastery. And every one of us is part of that journey. So peace, balance, love, and abundance to everybody that participated today on this beautiful streamcast here.
I
And thank
cannot
you, Baba.
be grateful enough or thank you enough. I am totally honored with what you have shared with the Conscious Collective. The links to your website will be below, networkofawareness.com, right? So that people can get immediate access to your podcast and even your TikTok. Even though I may link the TikTok link to also, so people have that information if they want to continue to hear you share your perspectives and your view in the journey. I'm sure that a lot of people want to hear more, and I am
By the
grateful
way,
for.
real quick, if people want to listen to me, they can go to any podcast, wherever podcasts are played. I'm everywhere. I'm international. So I'm on every platform. You can even ask Siri, and you can go, Siri, play the Network of Awareness podcast, and Siri will take you right there. So, my podcast is everywhere. It's not just on the website. If you like to listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, I'm on all those channels.
So you have it there. So if the Conscious Collective wants more like this, not just in the chat here on the side, put in the comments below the video, more like this, Baba, or more like this, so that I know that this is something that engages you and something that you're looking for, and I can bring other speakers up. It's strange that we don't have a lot of this in the conscious community. Everyone seems to be in their different sectors, and they don't come together as a collective to share ideas and to connect with each other and to build. We're going to try to do that here. We have people outside of this conscious community, and all they do is connect and collab with each other. but you hardly ever see any conscious thinkers, right, coming together to do the same thing, right? And we need to change that, because as we come together, as you bring light together, you get a bigger light, right? And you shine more. So we're going to work actively to change that. I hope that Orra can come back in the future. It's Orra the Infromationalist from the Network of Awareness. If you have just tuned in and you really want to know what was said and really grow, rewind this, see it from the beginning. It's live from the beginning. And I promise you, there are going to be gem after gem after gem that's going to be dropped, right? That you're going to have, you're not going to have to wear your crystals today. You're just going to have to listen to this message, and you're going to have all the gems you need on you. All right. They're going to be embedded in your soul and in your spirit. So I am gratefully thankful for this. Okay. All right. I'm totally honored for those that have participated. And I want to wish everyone, unless Orra has a few more words to say. You good?
I just want to say, keep taking care of yourself and each other, right? Just keep loving yourself like you never loved yourself before, and don't forget it. Just keep loving yourself no matter what happens, because that love that you have for yourself is going to transform your life, and it's going to transform the lives of others that get to encounter that love from you. So thank you again, Baba. Love you, brother. Thank you. Peace,
My
balance, love, and
love, and
abundance
my
to you.
pleasure. Put more in the comments below. Not in this side. This side comment doesn't register with the algorithm for some reason. So we're trying to work with these systems so we can get our perspective out here and help the world glow up, shine, or whatever phrase you want to use. All right. All right. So definitely put that in the comments below. I want to wish everyone love, light, health, and wellness in their journey. You guys have a great day.